Alright guys, my name is the Metagoblin and today I'm going to be giving you another classic World of Warcraft class guide. Today we're going to be focusing on Rogue. So what I noticed is that on all my pretty much on all my leveling videos, if I literally change the talent build very slightly by like 1 talent point, everyone just seems to go absolutely crazy because I'm not basically doing the conventional and most optimal talent build for every single leveling build in the game for each class. And I thought, instead of getting butthurt about that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it a level further and theory craft even more crazy, just crazier different builds which are less conventional but probably more fun than the conventional builds. At the end of the day, guys, like my builds are probably like a little bit different. Really they need a lot of testing to test whether they actually are better or not. What you would need is you need to be like best player of each class to do a speed run of the entire 1 to 60 experience with both builds, and really we don't have that kind of like ability, so we can't say that my builds are slightly less optimal or even more optimal. I mean, at the end of the day, you can only make a 10% DPS difference with different builds anyway, really. The difference, obviously some builds are probably quite terrible, but the builds I go for are probably like 1% less optimal. At the end of the day, it's not going to be a massive significant increase. And the build I have for you today is called the Rogue Ghost build, right? And I think, at the end of the day, you're spending a lot of time leveling, a lot of time. And the most optimal build for Rogue is to basically cast nothing but 2 spells, right? You're just going to do Sinister Strike and the Viscerate at 5 combo points and that's it. Which is incredibly boring because if you think about it, if you're very fast, you're probably going to have to do about 6 days playtime before you hit level 60. And you're probably only going to be casting like 3 spells, including stealth, So why not pick a slightly less optimal build? It might only be like 1% less optimal, but with more abilities. And the build I have for you today is you're probably going to be using a good 5 abilities, and the rotation's a little bit more interesting, and just a playstyle is a little bit more interesting and just a little bit more detailed to keep you engaged in the gameplay. At the end of the day, you can change the build later on if you want. But anyway, this build, it's very different. I've given it a snazzy name. It's called a Rogue Ghost build, and the primary purpose of this build is to mitigate damage on yourself and just kind of increase your survivability and decrease the time it takes for you to recover from certain fights. So let's jump into the build. I will show you the talent calculator right now. Anyway guys, if you've liked the video so far, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next video, where I'm basically going to be giving a guide where I'm going to give a wand progression guide and weapon progression guides for each and every class. So look forward to like more smaller guides like this one. But anyway, let's jump into the build. So the primary purpose of this build is to basically increase your survivability. What you will find is that you're going to take a lot less damage with this build. You do less damage, but you would take a lot less damage. And when you take less damage, it means that you spend less time recovering from that damage. And you'll also find it's actually easier for you to solo certain difficult quests, and you generally just die less as well, which is another good perk. And I've been testing this on the vanilla gaming server at different level ranges, and the build feels really strong. You can go pretty much, you can like last about 6 mobs without really needing to sit down and heal, and even then you probably won't even need to like sit down and eat food if you're optimizing your spirit gear. We'll talk about the spirit stat later on. What we're going to do right now is talk about the actual build itself. So what you're actually going to do is start off in the subtlety tree. I think I've said that correctly. Because this build basically revolves around Ghostly Strike. So Ghostly Strike, if you don't know, it has a 10-second cooldown. Not 10 seconds, it's actually a bit longer than that. You don't get the cooldown on here, unfortunately. I'm going to look that up quickly. So Ghostly Strike, it's a spell. It basically does 125% weapon damage, which is actually quite nice. The damage of it is nice. We're not really getting it for the damage, but what we're getting it is for that dodge chance. It has a 20-second cooldown, which means pretty much in every single fight you're going to have 15% extra dodge chance for about half the fight. Fights normally last about 15 to 20 seconds. So that increased dodge chance is actually going to be quite significant at negating damage on yourself. So the build you're going to start with, at the starting stats, it doesn't really matter what you go for that much. really, you know, we're only specking down this tree to get the Ghost Strike. So I go for opportunity because the first few levels you are going to make use of ambush. But honestly, like, sometimes you are going to make use of the ambush, and the increased ambush damage is nice. Mostly I actually open with cheap shot when I'm playing rogue, because again, that's 2 seconds, no, it's not 2, can't even remember, I think it's 3 seconds on me not taking damage, I mean basically getting free damage on the target, which is pretty good. And so I like to do that quite a lot to again mitigate damage on myself. This whole build is focused around taking less damage. So, you know, you're going to kidney shot and cheap shot. You're going to do your stuns more, and you're going to gouge more as well, just for a little bit to get your energy back when you're energy starved. It is actually good to gouge to let your energy come back, and maybe even bandage. But anyway, most of the time you aren't actually going to take advantage of his talent because you're not going to use ambush that much, but you will probably use it from time to time. This stealth detection one, it's fairly meh. It's fairly meh, to be honest. Don't think it's that advantageous. But what is really good, if you go down in the subtlety tree, is the reduced cooldown on Vanish. Again, you know, we are trying to optimize our survivability, and with blind and Vanish cooldown reduced, that's going to be quite advantageous, because Vanish has a number of uses. You know, it's just it will save your life more than once. So yeah, that's good to go in. And then I'll probably just get 3 points in the increased stealth speed, because, you know, that's just a little bit more useful. Whereas the sleight of hand is, you know, it's more of a raiding talent. And then you get Ghost Strike, and then you Ghostly Strike. You're not really going to spec any further into this tree. And then the main talents to go for, really from here, you just follow a more conventional, typical build, but you're not going to go into Assassination because you do want to get further down the combat tree. So you are going to skip Remorseless attacks. And what you're going to do is focus on obviously increasing your dodge chance and your mitigation chance. The key talents here, what I would go for, are the ones I've selected now. The 5% dodge, 5% parry, and reduced cooldown on evasion and sprint. Is it on sprint? Yeah, it's on sprint as well. So again, that's another good advantage. And then obviously I would get riposte as well. And these are the key talents. From here, really, you can just follow a more conventional build. But these are the key talents. The build, Rogue Ghost build, which I've now coined. I mean, the build, it revolves around these talents. These are the key talents. These are the talents that in the game are going to provide you with the best defensive advantages out of any other build. And, you know, for in here, you know, you obviously need your precision and dual wheel spec, and you just try and optimize your DPS from here with whatever talents you can. But yeah, those are the key talents. Ghostly Strike, Lightning Reflexes, Deflection, Endurance, Riposte. And the thing that's great about Riposte, you should be using Riposte, you know, as often as you can, because 1, it does quite a decent damage, 2, it disarms the target, which again reduces even more damage on you. When you really do play this build and you've experimented with it and you've been playing it for a while, you will notice that you just barely take any damage, and you barely spend time healing, or eating, sorry, you know, which it just massively reduces your uptime. And I just prefer this build. I don't like having higher DPS, but at the cost of having higher DPS having to sit down and eat more. I prefer a build which is going to keep me in the game playing for longer. So that's why I've always preferred this build, and I honestly think I am going to go for this. I do go for this build when I level a rogue, and I am going to do it when I play classic WoW. And I honestly think it is very competitive with conventional builds, just because of the amount of time it takes away of you actually, just amount of downtime it reduces. So, but anyway, the last thing I'm going to talk about before I finish the video is stats. Like, what stats do you want to stack? And if you've watched the, I can't remember the guy's name, a really good YouTuber is called Mizoto or something like that. I watch him quite regularly, and he made a video again which is a little bit unconventional, a little bit different like my videos, and he did get a lot of, well, not a massive hate for it, but some negativity from it, because he recommended warriors to use staffs and recommended to stack spirit. Okay, and what he's saying when it comes, just you go and watch the video, and what he says about spirit, and he basically compares stacking strength to stacking spirit. Basically, when you are leveling up, you don't really get massive big gear pieces with a lot of like stats on them. So if you just sat there, you're level 30 or 40, and you take all your strength gear off, you take all your agility gear off, the amount of weapon DPS your gear actually contributes is actually not very significant, and really the actual weapon itself and the DPS on the weapon is what contributes the most. So he basically recommends, and I would also recommend, to stack Spirit when you're leveling up, because Spirit, again, it massively reduces the downtime between pulls, between fights, which saves time more than just being able to do a little bit extra DPS. And he does like timely comparisons on strength stacking and spirit stacking, and you kind of notice that you probably only save like 1 to 2 seconds by stacking a DPS stat, whereas with spirit you are going to take advantage of that reduced downtime, which is pretty good. Another thing to know is that when you actually sit down in the game, basically press your X key and you sit down in the game, your passive mana and health regeneration is amplified even further. So that's just another thing to know. So, and when you are stacking spirit, you will notice that your health just bops up pretty quickly. Unfortunately, with warrior, it is more significant than it is for rogue. Basically, rogues benefit from spirit less than warriors, unfortunately, and I think that's probably just because warriors had the tank spec and they kind of needed spirit a little bit more. So there's that to bear in mind. You can just stack agility. Okay, I'm not saying stacking agility is bad, because stacking agility is actually really good. You get the extra DPS, but you also get the extra dodge chance, which is really nice because it scales very nicely at the lower levels. Especially if you log into a level 1 night elf, you're going to have about 7.5% dodge chance. You level into a... is it a rogue? No, dwarf can do... yeah, dwarves can be rogue in vanilla. You go and play it on a dwarf and you have 2% dodge chance, right? So, and that's because obviously night elf have increased dodge, but also because they have increased agility by about 10 points. So increasing your agility does massively increase your dodge chance as well in the lower levels. You will feel that percentage advantage more in the lower levels than you do at the higher levels. Obviously the higher levels doesn't, we're not talking about that kind of thing. But anyway, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say in this video. At the end of the day, remember, it is just a little bit of fun theory crafting. You don't have to take this video very seriously. Anyway, my name is Untitled Goblin. Until my next video, ciao.